So you're thinking about moving to Kansas City in 2024 and you're looking for the pros and the cons of living in Kansas City. Well, you've come to the right place. In this video, we're going to discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. Stay tuned. So I'll be covering some pros and some cons, and some that may be considered pros and cons depending on who you are or what side of the state line you fall on. And this is one that could be viewed as a pro or a con, and that is the border war here in Kansas City. So as you may or may not know, our metro is split right down the middle by a state line, and you have Kansas on one side and you have Missouri on the other. Now, the Kansas City, the OG Kansas City, is in Missouri. That's the biggest city in our metro area, has over 500,000 people, and then we also have a Kansas City, Kansas to make things extra confusing. But people on both sides have a lot of pride about where they live, and that's something that's really been highlighted, especially here as of late. I would say it's more of a con lately, to be honest, because the Royals are trying to build a new stadium, and they want that to be in downtown Kansas City. However, Kansas is trying to entice them over to their side. Neither side can really agree on it, which has led to a lot of back and forth between Kansas City Kansans and Kansas City Missourians, which is what really makes this a bigger con for me, because it's harder to get things done when you have two different states representative of one city. However, it does come with its perks as well, because Kansas just legalized sports betting and Missouri just legalized cannabis. So you don't necessarily have to live in a state where one of those things is legal in order to get it here in Kansas City, because you can just drive across state line. And by the way, if we haven't met yet, my name's Kyle and I'm a local real estate agent here in Kansas and Missouri, so it doesn't matter which side of the state line you end up on. I would be happy to help you if you're considering a move to Kansas City. All of my contact information is displayed on the screen below, and be sure to download our free relocation guide if you are considering making the move. The next pro of living in Kansas City, especially right now in 2024 and beyond, is the amount of growth that we're seeing in our city. And going back to the border war, the one time that Kansas and Missouri were able to come together and approve a bi-state sales tax was when they were questioning whether or not they should renovate or demolish Union Station. Yeah, let that sink in for a minute. They were considering demolishing Union Station at one point, which is unimaginable as a Kansas Citian today, because it's the anchor of downtown. That's where the NFL draft was just held. But on top of that, the NFL draft wouldn't have happened had we not just invested in a $1.5 billion international airport. And that's not the only thing that we're excited about here in Kansas City. We have the streetcar and the streetcar extension that's currently going on. We have all these awesome new entertainment districts and developments that are taking place around Kansas City. And I think that's the main reason that Kansas City has caught the national eye. Well, that and Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce potentially getting married. It's an exciting time to live here in Kansas City, and that's one of the biggest pros for me living here in 2024. Now, a couple of cons that come with any city growing. The first one is construction. There's a lot of construction taking place throughout Kansas City. Main Street, for example, where the streetcar is being extended, is an absolute mess. There's construction everywhere. It is a nightmare, and I try to avoid it at all costs, but I also try to tell myself that this is temporary, and ultimately this is going to lead to a better Kansas City and a better future for Kansas City, because the streetcar is being extended 3.5 miles from its current 2-mile route, which is huge for a city that has kind of a lack of public transportation. And the other con that comes with this progress is higher taxes. So our property taxes have increased by 100% in a lot of cases in some parts of the city. And that's not just from the progress and the new development. There's this common misconception that these new entertainment districts are the reasons for property taxes going up, but those are private developments, so they don't necessarily have as big of an impact. But what has a bigger impact currently on our property taxes increasing is the high appreciation that's taken place over the past 3 years due to a shortage of supply. So we have the lowest amount of houses on the market over these past 3 years than we've had ever in Kansas City. And that has really driven up the cost of housing. Now, one of my pros to Kansas City kind of contradicts that, because it's also a very affordable place to live. So yeah, our property taxes are going up. I have been negatively impacted by that because mine went up 120% over a 2-year period. But at the same time, I moved here from a place like Denver where the median home price is $600,000 and the median home price in Kansas City as a whole is $300,000. Now, there are some places where real estate is a lot more expensive, but we still have options in the $100,000 and the $200,000 and the $300,000 price range where those have all been eliminated in other markets. I help people relocate here all the time from like California and Arizona and Las Vegas, and they can't believe the affordability here. So while property taxes have increased and that's been a burden, especially to Kansas Cityans, a lot of people are still moving here and seeing it as a very affordable place to live. This next con is a big one that I get asked about on a regular basis for people who are moving to Kansas City because there are a lot of negative headlines out there and we make it on quite a few top 10 most dangerous cities in the country. And that's true. We're outpacing last year in homicides here in Kansas City. However, that is concentrated to the city, so it doesn't apply to the suburbs. And there are plenty of safe neighborhoods within Kansas City to live. What I always suggest is to check out neighborhoodscout.com. They have a heat map for the crime to show you where most of it is taking place because a lot of it is targeted. It's concentrated to specific areas. So make sure you do that research up front. There are plenty of safe spaces throughout Kansas City, so don't let that deter you if you're considering a move in 2024. Now, one of the pros that I hear time and time again, almost every time I talk to somebody that has visited Kansas City and they're considering a move here, it usually has something to do with the people because the Midwestern hospitality here in Kansas City is a very real thing. And people are blown away by just how friendly folks are when they arrive here. I just got done having a conversation with somebody that's moving here from New York, to which I thought to myself, well, people are probably friendlier in every other part of the country aside from New York. The people here is really what makes Kansas City so special because they are so friendly and it's easy to get plugged in and build a community, which is harder to do in some of these other cities. And that was my experience when I lived in Denver. It was hard for us to get plugged in and build a community because our experience was that people were moving there to get away from their family of origin. And there's a lot of stuff to do in places like Denver and California where you don't necessarily need community, right? And you get caught up in the rat race. But here it's just kind of a slower pace. People are friendlier. So it's definitely something that I love about living here in Kansas City. Another pro about living in Kansas City is the vibrant art scene. We have a world-class museum in the Nelson Atkins Museum. I'm constantly on Reddit, on the Kansas City subreddit. Shout out if anybody is watching my video and you've come from there. The people over there are always talking about art museum, and I've only been to a handful throughout the country. Ours here, I mean, it's like 100 years old. It's this beautiful building. It has all this gorgeous architecture, and it's not just the museum, but it's Sculpture Park, which is that picturesque lawn that you can go to and have picnics and throw frisbees and throw footballs and just hang out and spend the day there and make a day of it. It's located really close to the Country Club Plaza, which is another place where you can go and enjoy the arts with the Plaza Art Fair every year. And we have those art fairs really all throughout the city. And then you have the Crossroads where we have First Fridays and art galleries open up on the weekends. So art is such a huge part of our culture here in Kansas City, and I think that it's something we get slept on for because we're here in the Midwest. Now, before we move on to the last couple pros and cons, be sure to download our free relocation guide. If you are considering a move in 2024 to Kansas City, my team and I, we would love to help you. So this next con has to do with outdoor activities, and that's something that we get a negative mark for almost every single time. If you look at the list and the positive and negative check marks that we get, outdoor activities is one that we're really lacking here because we don't have mountains and we don't have the ocean. So it really makes sense, like getting out and having those beautiful picturesque mountain hikes or going to, just sit on a beach and stare at the ocean. Well, we don't have that here. We're landlocked. Now, you do have better access to that now because of our international airport. And we do have mountain biking trails and hiking areas. Although in the summer, you got to be careful about hiking because we also have like ticks and bugs are a really big concern here. And that would be another con of living in Kansas City is we have that. But we do have outdoor recreation. It's just fairly limited to like lakes and mountain biking. However, if you're moving from a coastal area or from the Rockies, well, you might be a little disappointed in the lack of nature and outdoor activities that we have here in Kansas City because it doesn't really compare to those other areas. Another big con about living here in Kansas City is the weather. Now, I've talked about this a lot on my channel. You can watch this video here on the weather, but it's the middle of winter right now. It's cold, and it's not just cold, it's overcast, and that's something that I really miss about Denver is having 300 days of sunshine. We get something more like 220 days of sunshine here, so you do get those dreary cold days, and it's just not as beautiful as it is during the spring, summer, and fall months. And I really do love the other 3 seasons here in Kansas City, but I'm not gonna lie, I hate winter. So if you are moving here from a warmer climate, 2 things: make sure you have lots of layers, and number 2 is vitamin D supplements in the wintertime. It's a game changer. And what would a pros and cons list of Kansas City be without barbecue? Look, we have world-class barbecue options here, and if you haven't tried it, you at least need to visit. And my favorite barbecue joint right now in Kansas City is Chef Jay's. They're absolutely blowing up. They started in the West Bottoms. Now they're at Arrowhead Stadium, and now they're getting ready to open a location down at Penway Point next to the Ferris wheel, and there's going to be a smokehouse where you'll get to watch his whole process, and it's going to be something to behold. There's no such thing as a perfect place to live. Everywhere has its own set of pros and cons. This is just my personal list of pros and cons of living in Kansas City, but I would love to be a resource for you. So if you ever have any questions about moving to Kansas City or just what it's like here, shoot me a text day or night. I'd be happy to help you out with that. And if after all this, you're still considering a move to Kansas City, but you want to see what some of the neighborhoods are like, then check out this playlist right here where we have a collection of different neighborhood tours around Kansas City.